to part 61. And this will be my last part for this morning because I got to go to work. But, anyways, I want to jump straight on back in here. But this is part 61 of In the Beginning and in the End. And this is March the 13th, 2025 by man's calendar. And I want to jump straight on back in here to Genesis 39, and I'm going to recap verse 9. This is what Joseph told the wife of his master. There is none greater in this house than I, neither has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it came to pass as she spoke to Joseph day by day that he hearkened not to her, to lie by her, or to be with her. And how many don't know that whenever the Lord's blessing you, the devil will come along and try to tempt you away from your blessings? How many don't know that? The devil will show up to try to steal what God has given you, won't he? Right here's a prime example of that. Know what you're being lured away by. Know what lusts and enticements are trying to draw you away from God and try to take you elsewhere. And don't think it's something God gives you. God does not give us things that are sin. No, he does not. He does not put sinful things in our path either. Why? Because God does not tempt. Absolutely does not tempt. God does not tempt. And he may try us, but he does not tempt us to do sin. That is what Satan does. So, y'all need to get that through your mind. And don't be blaming the Lord and saying, well, I was born this way, or that God made me this way. No, God didn't make you a sinner. God didn't make you a hypocrite. God didn't make you gay. God didn't make you broken. God does not make broken things. God made us in his image. It is when we are drawn away by our own lust and enticed that we become the broken thing. So don't be blaming God because you don't want to withhold from your own lusts and desires. Because Jesus, God himself, Jesus, come here and he died to give us an option. Made himself a sacrifice so that we would have a choice. Follow him, be like him, come out of sin, leave it, don't be a part of it, don't be a partaker of it. You see, Joseph had a choice in this, and he chose not to partake of that sin of adultery with this woman. But let's get on back into this word, verse 11. And it came to pass about this time, this is Genesis 39:11. And it come to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there inside. And she caught him by the garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. And it came to pass when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and was fled forth, that she called to the men of the house and spoke to them, saying, See, he has brought in a Hebrew to us to mock us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. And it came to pass when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled and got him out. And she laid up his garment by her until the Lord came home. And she spoke to him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant which you have brought to us came in to me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spoke to him, saying, After this manner did your servant to me, his wrath was kindled, and Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he were there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Why? Because all things work to the greater good to them that love the Lord and who are called according to his purpose. But you have to believe and trust in the Lord, and Joseph did. So the Lord kept him, even in prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hands all the prisoners that were in the prison. And whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that he was under his The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him. And that which he did, the Lord made it prosper. How about that? The Lord made it to prosper. See, when the Lord's in something, you can't stop it. It's going to prosper the way the Lord wants it to. Chapter 40 of Genesis. And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry against two of his officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them inward in the house of the captain of the guard into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. And they continued a season inward. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night. each man according to the interpretation of his dream. The butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. And Joseph came into them in the morning and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of the Lord's house, saying, Wherefore look you so sadly today? And they said to him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter yet. And Joseph said to them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and said to him, In my dream, behold, a vine was before me, and the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, and her blooms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. And I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said to him, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are the 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up your head and restore you to your place. And you shall deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand, after the former manner when you were his butler. But think on me when it shall be well with you, and show kindness, I pray you, to me, and make mention of me to Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away out of my land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there was all manner of baked meats for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the baskets upon my head. And Joseph answered and said, This is the interpretation thereof. 3 baskets are 3 days. And yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up your head from off you, and shall hang you on a tree, and the birds shall eat your flesh from off you. And it came to pass the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast to all servants. And he lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him. And that is all we have time for right at this time. Be the grace of the Lord. Hopefully I'll be able to jump back in here to chapter 41 later this evening or something. We shall see what the Lord does. But I will see you in the next part as soon as I get a chance to get it up.